Happy almost Thanksgiving, everybody. We figured we'll squeeze in one more episode ahead of that. It's the call up. You got Aram and Jack McLean. And of course, we're still talking top 100. This time it's risers and fallers. More excited to talk about the risers always. We'll probably spend more time on the risers, but also something Jack and I were just talking about before we hit record. A couple guys off the top. We already talked about them because they're in the top 20. So we won't spend as much time there. It's a good opportunity to shine the light on some of the players outside of the top 20 that we didn't get to talk about as much in the last few episodes.
100%. I also know that we owe people a last word on the Just Baseball show. You have a last word bookmarked, but might as well make it the first word on the call up. So then if you listen to both the call up and the Just Baseball show, we can have this conversation. But we've brought this up, I think once an episode for the last 4 or 5 episodes. You did a little card dive here and you found something nauseating, concerning, hilarious. How would you describe it?
This guy's not a top 100 prospect. So, Hyun Suk Jong, we were joking about how it went viral.
6'4", 200 pounds, mind blown emoji.
Blown, right? Yeah. Mind blown that he's 6'4", 200 pounds. And it went viral. It's like the Dodgers have another pitcher that might be a star, and another international pitcher who could be incredible, and it went viral. And then Topps posted it, and then Bleacher Report, and it actually affected the card market. Like, it actually made his cards expensive. And look, Hyun Suk Jong may end up becoming a good pitcher. I don't know, but the odds are stacked against him. And when he is one of the most expensive pre-debut pitching prospect cards in the hobby, it just doesn't totally feel right. He walked 18% of batters. It felt a little disingenuous. I don't know. I understand that a lot of these outlets are doing the engagement baiting thing, and you want to get the clicks and whatever. But when Topps posted it, I'm like, you're telling people that this guy might be a star, and you're maybe giving them the wrong idea when he's a 21-year-old who walked 18% of batters and low A. I don't know. I don't like the idea of the company making the cards also gassing up these players in a way that it just doesn't seem authentic. And it really had a direct impact on the market. So I don't know. Something feels weird about that to me, where we're not really telling though. It was I think the Topps post was this guy's turning heads. And it's is he turning heads? I don't know if he's doing that.
This is kind of a karma deal too, because they posted that pretty much at the beginning of the Arizona Fall League, and you take a peek at what Hyun Suk Jong did in the Fall League, and it was not that good. 9 innings of work across 5 appearances, 11 hits, 9 runs. He walked 9 and K'd 7. So you're setting this guy up for failure because he hasn't, been amazing over the course of a single minor league season. He had 5 okay starts in low A in 2024, but you told me he was one of the highest priced non-debut pitchers on the card market, and I was flabbergasted when you told me that.
It's crazy. I think even including debuted guys, he was right there with Bubba Chandler and his price. And it's there's so many people that are interested in baseball cards, but maybe watch football and basketball and some other sports more. And so they see that post and they say, oh, wow, he was going to be the number 1 pick in the KBO draft. And he's with the Dodgers now, and he's huge and he throws really hard. I need to buy his cards. And so now you're kind of deceiving people out of, I think, spending too much money on something that they probably shouldn't. And that's the part that I don't love. That said, I did just sell my Hyun Suk Jong out of 250 auto. I didn't know that the market was doing what it was doing, and I needed some money, so I did put it on eBay. But I'm only selling one, and it did just sell. And it seems like the prices have gone down a little bit. It only sold for $100, but that is still way too much. I'm going to send the person who bought that card some more cards. But
capitalize, baby.
I had to.
You know what? Jump on the opportunity, and it's nice to be able to pull up Baseball Reference and also see that it hasn't been awesome.
Yeah, that's the thing. You could also do that if you're a card collector.
Right. Could do that.
But Yeah, we'll have more on that later. I'm excited about where the hobby is at, but I want us to tread lightly in just the media space on, especially on the card front of how we're talking about some of these players that clearly just a lot of people don't have access to the information and stuff like that as well.
Makes sense.
Let's jump into the biggest risers.
Let's do it. So here's what we got. Our czar Elijah Evans, who you heard on the newcomer episode, compiled the previous top 100 and this top 100, and he found out who rose the most by ranking and who fell the most by ranking. And there are some guys that, rose, but they're within the top 20 that we have talked about on one of the last few episodes, like Carter Jensen and Aiden Miller were both in the 20 to 11 clump that we did last week. Those guys were big risers in Miller and Jensen. But I do want to start with the two top pitchers in Nolan, McLean, and Trey Yesavage. McLean is at 3, Yesavage is at 6, and those guys climbed McLean from 42 to 3, and Yesavage from 71 to 6. So the question is a great big league sample across 8 or 9 starts for McLean enough to jump him to the number 3 prospect in baseball? And was the month of October enough to push Trey Yesavage up 70 spots? It seems like yes.
Yeah, this is the part, and I think this is a fun conversation about these players because I'm not going to do the whole like his fastball did this and that because we talked about that in the in the top 20. But on one side, yeah, it's just a larger sample with the ball that they're going to be throwing with, which helps a lot for the rest of their professional careers. So you can get a cleaner idea on the data. And a little bit more of an idea on how the stuff works. But at the end of the day, it's not a huge sample. And I think this is the hardest part. There's a lot of really funny, goofy parts of actually making lists and rankings with prospects because, you're comparing sometimes a DSL hitter to a AA pitcher, whatever it may be. I think the other really uniquely challenging part is you have to try to figure out how to weigh these big league debuts. And you're comparing a big league debut and a guy that is now thrown at the major league level to a high A pitcher, a AA, hitter, whatever it may be. And so you don't want to put too much weight in a successful big league debut, but it's impossible to not, elevate a guy's floor from that. So that's the part that I'm still, and I think it's just going to be with more experience, figuring out exactly how to, how to weigh that. But I do just feel like it's ultimately, a big part of it is just ultimately taking that big league sample and saying, did it expand on what, you already believed his strengths were in the minor leagues? And, what else did you take from that? But, with Yesavage as well, like it's the same thing. Both these guys did what they were already doing really well at the big league level. And so when you see that translate, it's like, okay, that makes some sense to me. If it was something that, a pitch that I didn't have a ton of confidence in was somewhat actually doing better and, maybe some of the underlying didn't look great and you watch the outings and you say, oh, maybe he was, skating by a little bit. Maybe it doesn't hold as much weight, but I'm still trying to figure out, does that mean you bump him up to 3 or does that mean you bump him up somewhere else? With McLean, it was easier because I think you could just clearly see a guy that has, a great chance to be a frontline arm. And I honestly think worst case scenario, he's tracking like a middle rotation arm next year. Yesavage was the more challenging one. But even then, I think we got enough of a sample to say this guy's going to be a middle rotation arm. I just don't know what the ceiling is.
Yeah, fair. There's no way to directly, correlate big league success or failure with, certain rising and falling on the top 100. I'm trying to think like if you were to make it formulaic, would you make a big league game 3x what a minor league game is? Would you make a big league start 2.5x what a minor league start is? There's no good way to do it. There's no clear-cut formula. If somebody does figure out a formula, they're going to be a billionaire because that will overhaul pretty much every analytics and scouting department that you possibly have. But I don't know, like it's funny because you look at a guy like Zach Cole in Houston who is outside the top 100 prospects, and he probably wasn't even thought to be a top 100 prospect. But there are some people sitting there saying, well, he hit 4 tape measure shots. He had an 880 OPS in his first 15 big league games. This guy has already proven big league success. Has he? We're in the sustainability business. So, yeah, it was a really good 15 games. But the question is, do you see sustainability? And for you, the answer was a much more resounding yes for McLean than it was for Yesavage, but Yesavage was still yes, and that's why he jumped 70 spots.
I think that's a great way to lay it out. And I think with hitters especially, but just in general, a slow big league start, I don't think is going to hurt you as much as a great big league start to your career is going to help you. But also I think pitchers are just a lot easier. You have tangible pitch data. You have longer outings to really just dig into and see how things work. I think it's a little bit easier in that regard to take something from these big league samples. But no, I think now with hitters, though, you have the swing decisions component that can really help because you see a guy already looking comfortable in his at bats there, like that makes a difference. But yeah, it is all about sustainability. And, I think with the pitchers, you can look at the stuff, look at the execution, look at the way everything was operating in comparison to the minor leagues and say, hey, this might be pretty sustainable.
All right, so now I want to pivot to a couple of Miami Marlins. And we mentioned previously, Carter Jensen, Aiden Miller, guys that rose a lot, but we already did the player-by-player breakdown on them on the 20-11 episode. So if you do want the player-by-player breakdown on Aiden Miller for the Phillies and Carter Jensen for the Royals, go to that previous episode of the call-up that was last week. But the two Marlins that we want to talk about, two AAA world champs, go Jumbo Shrimp, in Joe Mack and Robby Snelling. And Mack climbed about 22 spots. Mack climbed all the way into the mid-20s, and Robby Snelling was more than 40 spots up. He went from 72 to 30, a 42-spot climb. So I'm just curious from your perspective. Let's start with Mack. What made him a fringe top 25 prospect in Major League Baseball this year?
Yeah, I think with Mack, there's a few things, and we talk about the catching position and just if you're a fantastic defender there, how low the offensive barrier is to be a not only a primary catcher but a really good one at that. And I think that's always the biggest disconnect sometimes, like where we're talking about our rankings, and I think sometimes people look at others and say like, oh, well, these catchers are way lower there. If you're ranking for fantasy, I think it's a little bit of a different story because like Joe Mack could potentially be not a great fantasy catcher and be one of the better catchers in baseball at the same time. Look at Patrick Bailey, right? And I don't know if he's going to put up Patrick Bailey type of defensive numbers, but I also have some confidence that he's going to put up better than Patrick Bailey numbers offensively. So if you're 70% of Patrick Bailey defensively, but you're, 150% of him offensively, you're going to be in a pretty good spot. Maybe that's ambitious, but even say 120, 130. The point being, Mack has come along so far defensively where he already had the tools. He already looked great last year. Now he's receiving extremely well. I know the Marlins are really happy with the way he has progressed as just a pitch caller, just a game handler, working with the staff. And remember, he's a prep cold weather catcher, still just 22 years old for the entirety of last season. Yeah. And then you look at just the way that he is developed as a defender, where you say he could really put up some crazy numbers when you look at the metrics and then even just the surface level stuff. The catch and throw skills are ridiculous. He had one of the best. Joe Mack had one of the best, I think, caught stealings I've ever seen. And we've talked about it on here where it looked like he was initially going to go to third. It was a double steal, and the runner was already pretty close to third. So he throws like flat-footed and like sidearm, almost like a shortstop, and throws it straight over to second base and guns down the trail runner. Like there's just little things like that where you're looking at a really special athlete behind the dish. Excuse me. And then the offensive part that pushed him up was that he hit a little bit of a lull leading into our midseason update. And there was really, and the thing that I've talked about with him is Mack has had the challenges against spin at times. The swing decisions have been so good to hedge it. He's hammered velocity, and he's been able to make that work. He started training shapes a little bit more and focusing on the breaking balls down the stretch, and that was something that clearly helped him, put up good numbers down the final portion of the season. From the final 40 games, so July 23rd onward, Mack hit 250, 337, 528 to 865 OPS, 10 homers in 40 games. So you started to see that power really shine through again. And again, that's at the AAA level. I think there's some little things mechanically, like he is a big barrel tip that I think he could clean up to make it easier to stay through the zone on breaking balls. But what's abundantly clear here is you've got a guy that can hit 20 plus home runs, that's going to hammer velocity, and that's whose swing decisions have improved to the point where, I mean, even if he's a 95 WRC plus with some pop. He's going to be a 3+ WAR catcher with his defense. That's what I really believe. So, and then you have a chance of him being more than that. So I think he's one of the more underrated guys. And it's funny. People are like, oh, are you just excited about the Marlins guys? No, if you've been with us for a while, I've usually been getting complaints from our Marlins folks being like, well, where are these guys? Whatever. These Joe Mack and Robby Snelling, I think, are two clear cut. And I know Baseball America would say the same thing too. Two clear cut examples of the overhaul of the Marlins player development infrastructure. Kemp Alderman would be an example of that too. That is just helping to get more out of these players and tap into their true potential.
Yeah. So Mack, the big thing that everybody says whenever you ask a question about Joe Mack, whether it's in Jupiter or Miami, one of the first adjectives out of their mouth is special. This guy is a special communicator. He's a special receiver. He's a special player in general. Special does not come lightly, and that's a word that you earn by being an elite communicator and an elite teammate with your battery mates. And it seems like everybody that works with Joe Mack is incredibly happy to do so and feels like they're elevated on the mound, which is a huge piece of catching. When you look at possible outcomes for Joe Mack, there are very few that you look at and say, you know what, I'm going to be disappointed. Right away, there's a world where he's Bo Naylor, and he's a very athletic, good defender that is putting up like an 80 WRC plus. Now, granted, they're getting there in different ways, right? Naylor hit 190, but it was a ton of walks. Mack is not going to walk that much. The OBP was pretty low in AAA, but he's going to get to the OPS number by slugging. So why can't he also get to like a 670 OPS? And this is if it's not great. It's a 670 OPS, good defense. That's a 1.5, 2-win player if he's playing year round. The next outcome is probably Austin Wells, where he's hovering right around on 100 WRC plus. He's not walking much, but he's hitting the ball out of the ballpark. Austin Wells was a 3-win catcher this past year. Yep. The next echelon was Dylan Dingler. Dingler was a 4-win catcher at a 109 WRC plus. So there are so many boxes that he can check to say, wow, I want that guy. So many teams would be over the moon with Austin Wells or Dylan Dingler as their catcher. And Joe Mack could be that guy.
I think it's a great progression. And I think the fact that the floor is that kind of 1.5, 2-win catcher that you mentioned with Bo Naylor, because I think he's a little bit better of a defender than Naylor. But it's very similar, I think, output there if it's not working out the way you want it to. And again, that's a 1.5 to 2-win catcher. And that's probably the floor because of the
last catcher, by the way, to that point, last catcher to exceed 1.5 FWAR for the Marlins was JT Realmuto in 2018.
Exactly. So like he would be very welcome there. And then on top of that, you have, I think the upside. I keep going to Dingler and seeing what Dingler did last year and saying, because no one thought Dingler would be that valuable. Although we talked about in the Tiger system and said, hey, this guy made a leap, right? But it all came together for him. I think it could look something very similar to that. Very athletic catcher, runs into some homers. Sometimes the approach can get him out of whack, or sometimes there's a little bit more whiff. And I mean, if you have that, outcome there, you're thrilled. And that's the difference between the fantasy and the top 100 for it. Just got a real world output there that I think puts Mack and some of these other catchers just in a higher value bucket for us.
Yeah. Next one is Snelling. Robby Snelling is the number 30 prospect on Just Baseball's top 100. And Robby Snelling got right back to the Robby Snelling that we fell in love with in 2023. Robby Snelling was, and then some. I mean, he pushed pretty much everything. And you fell in love with this guy because he was a 19-year-old pitchability guy that had very good, borderline elite command at the lower levels. And he was punching dudes out and he was getting ground balls. And then it was a year from hell in 24 that included a trade. And then he breaks into 25, and all of a sudden the fastball's up a couple of ticks, and the fastball shape is way better. There were so many things that progressed for Robby Snelling this year, but the fastball had to lead the way there, right?
I mean, the fastball is what pushed the ceiling higher. And I always actually have a tweet dialed up for this, just because I think this is another area where people haven't fully embraced the fact that this is a different Robby Snelling here, because I think the conversation still seems to be around him. Oh yeah, he's a high probability back end starter, which is 100% true. But now there's a guy that's got middle rotation stuff, and I think the floor is as high as any, pitcher we're going to talk about here. And then you still now have seen the ceiling get pushed higher as well. His fastball jumped by more than 2 ticks. That's one part of it. But not only did he hold the velocity uptick, it actually ticked up another half mile per hour down his final 10 starts. So he continued to just head on this track where he averaged 95 miles per hour on his fastball with that extra 1.5 inches of vert over his final 10 starts. Reminder, a lot of pitchers are losing vert on their fastball, at the AAA level. So I think that's a really impressive part of it. Opponents hit 164 against Robby Snelling's fastball this past season. And when he started averaging 95 instead of 94.5, final 10 appearances, opponents hit 116 against his four-seam fastball. The biggest part for me is he fills up the zone. You mentioned the pitchability side of things. And now he brought that curveball back. He talked about that with us. That was his bread and butter. So now you have that pitch back as an above average pitch. You've got the changeup that looks like an above average pitch now that it's playing off of that lively fastball. And then he added this slider as well. But you have to respect the fact that he can land all of those pitches on one side of it. But now you've got to be just prepared for heater and react off of everything else because it's getting on you so quick. There's some crossfire. There's some deception. And I mean, I don't know. There's some things when you look at the pitch shapes, he clearly outperforms them. And that's why I think the deception that is built into his just delivery is maybe undervalued here. Yeah. It's 27% in zone whiff rate on that fastball. And that only went up when he got to AAA. 31% in zone whiff rate on the fastball over his final 15 starts with a 30% chase rate. That's better than Thomas White's figures. Yeah. And again, I'm not saying this is a better fastball than Thomas White, but it's really good. There's deception and he's executing the heck out of it. And reminder, he was 21 years old the entirety of last year. So I think the fact that Snelling's fastball is now a plus pitch totally alters his ceiling. And I don't know if that's fully been embraced yet in the industry.
And, I know Thomas White is the higher rated prospect on this top 100. Don't get it twisted. Robby Snelling is the first one of the big leagues. I know they're pitching at the same exact level, but Snelling has far less to work on. It's really just an enhancement of Snelling at this point. White has some tangible things he's got to work on. Exhibit A is throwing the ball in the strike zone consistently. There were outings where he walked 6 guys. I can't say 6 or 7 guys. I can't remember which one it was, though, but he walked 6 guys at least in an outing. In AAA, Snelling will not do that. It really seems like he's got command of every single start that he has. So Snelling will be the first one of the big leagues, no doubt about it.
Yeah, Snelling had that little blip. Like I think it was right before he hopped on with us where he walked. It was uncharacteristic, like 13 and 3 appearances. And then from that point forward, he rattled off 18 starts where he had a 5.7% walk rate and a 30.7% carry. It's 124 strikeouts and 23 walks. So
come on.
And this is another guy where, like, if it all doesn't come together, okay, feel really good about him just eating innings in the back of a rotation for you. But with the fastball trending to where it is, I feel like he's going to be closer to that number 3 type of starter.
Another arm we go to here, Luis Morales. Luis Morales is at number 27. He is a Sacramento A's prospect. Luis Morales was a big-time climber. Morales went from 74 to 27. Why is this guy up 50 spots?
This is a guy that I think we've talked about as another underrated prospect, right? Like, hey, that seems to be the theme here with guys that are kind of validating our early bullish, just excitement around them. Morales, we've had on the top 100, I think sometimes being like the lone outlet with him on the top 100. And then you saw him do it in AAA a little bit. And then you saw him do it in the big leagues. And I think with him, that sample matters a lot because Morales, what we always talked about is, oh my gosh, the stuff is crazy. It's a plus heater that's averaging 97 miles per hour. It's above average slider. It's a plus curveball. It's an above average changeup. Can he just throw enough strikes? The other question I had was, will the fastball shape get docked a good bit at the big league level? Because it wasn't the best shape, but it was just high octane, right? So, and the answer was yes, he was able to preserve that shape a little bit, and it was an effective enough heater. And obviously the velocity played. just seeing him at the big league level do what he did, and pitching half of his games in Sacramento, which is not easy. Just ask Luis Severino. I think that was the part that really encouraged me as well. And I still think he's far from a finished product, right? He was 22 years old for the entirety of last season. But to get up there and show, hey, I can throw enough strikes here, only walk 9% of batters in 10 starts. Like, he's somebody that can get away with an elevated walk rate, but just to see him keep that in check, especially when he's pitching in an environment where maybe you're encouraged to nibble at times. I feel like the floor got brought up a little bit higher here. And this is a pretty big league sample compared to everybody else. He almost graduated. And the ceiling is still, really high as an exciting arm.
It's also interesting. I feel like you see with pitchers in particular as opposed to hitters, but it's almost easier to see when pitchers look like a refined version of themselves versus a guy that is unrefined. And there are some pitchers that come up and you could say, oh, you know what? They're going to look like the same guy for the next 10 to 15 years and we're good. Like, I do think Nolan McLean looks like some version of what we've seen in the big leagues for the next 10 years. And how much will drastically improve? Does he add a couple of pitches? I have no idea. But somebody like Jonah Tong seems like he's unrefined. And it's like, oh, he still has so much more to go, but it's cool that he's making his debut at this point. Thinking back a couple of years, like Dylan Cease was a clear one where he debuted and he had some serious cachet, but you knew there was still a ton of growth that needed to be had and would be had with Dylan Cease. And it feels like Luis Morales kind of fits into that, where you're watching this fun project, this unrefined, exciting project that is going to get better, that is going to kind of fill out the arsenal and fill out his pitching identity more as the years go by. But the very beginning of his major league stage was fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And just the fact that he was able to make it all work still while being unrefined or not, totally the most refined he can be is what makes me so excited about him. So
unfinished product is nicer. It's nicer to say. Yeah.
Yes. And I think he was more refined this year than we'd ever seen him. So that's the great part. And a big part of this next phase for the Athletics, and I think one of the guys that has a chance to grab a hold of the front side of that rotation.
Yep. Next guy is just a spot later. It's Sal Stewart of the Cincinnati Reds. And Sal Stewart made the climb from 59 to 28. You loved the big league sample that we got from Sal Stewart. You loved the very small AAA sample that we got from Sal Stewart. How much did big league success factor in?
That's a big part. Is honestly, I think if it was just the big league success, like we didn't see the trend that we had seen, like it was more of just the same, which was still a really productive player that we saw in the first half of the minor league season. I don't think he climbs as much. He still would have climbed because he went up and did it at the big league level. The big thing with Stewart is, and I know we talked about it a lot on the show because I've always been really excited about him, is that he totally changed his angles. Like he started to elevate the ball way more consistently before he got up to the big league level. And I think that was the part that was, it's just night and day from him. Yeah. Where you look at the first 60 games of the season, Sal was very productive. This was in the minor leagues, obviously. Was very productive. He had 308, he had an 815 OPS. That's kind of what Sal has been, right? But it's elevated ground ball rate, about 49%, only 4 homers, but a lot of doubles. From that point forward, before the call up to the big leagues, he played 58 games. His ground ball rate dropped to 35%.
Wow.
So you cut the ground ball rate by 15%. And he hit 16 homers in 58 games. Because we always talked about with him, he hits the living crap out of the ball, and he has good contact skills. So if you could just drive it in the air, and I know it's so much easier said than done, but if you could start driving the ball in the air more consistently, a guy like that, his power output, it'll be a rare jump. Like you don't often see guys go from 4 in the first half to 16 in the second half, and that's not including the big leagues. So he does that and does it in double and triple A. The swing decisions continue to look good. The glove gets a little bit better to the point where he looks serviceable, and definitely looks like he can play a solid first, but serviceable at third. And
he doesn't have to play third. They traded for a third baseman.
I know.
He won't have to.
Yeah, I know. He won't have to. But the quality of contact just got so much better. And then you take those 58 games where you're already getting really excited, and he was already a big-time riser. And then you add in the big league sample where, in 20 games or so there, like he continued to do the same and elevate and hit for power. And that was while not being in the lineup maybe as consistently as he's ever been used to. So it was everything you wanted to see from Sal, and I think he's going to have a monster year next year.
So you posed the question when we were running through the top 10 last week. You said, would you take McLean and Benj or the field for National League Rookie of the Year? I feel like when you close your eyes and see the field, you see Sal Stewart. Is that fair?
Sal, Weatherholt, yeah. But Sal's got an inside track, I think, because of what he's already done and because of the fact that he's going to be playing in Great American Ballpark where his skill set is just perfect, right? Hits the ball really hard, and now he's elevating a little bit more. Even the balls that he squares up too much that are line drives are going to get out. So Sal's got it. I think might be the biggest threat.
Got you. It was funny. I was also looking at the odds the other day, and I was like, there are some prospects that have no business being as high as they should be. Like that's a really weird one. And obviously I don't touch it, but I'm fascinated by how those are put together because people don't know ETAs. Like that's not a known thing by anybody in Las Vegas.
It's so funny. And that's the one area where I'm always like, man, where do they get some of these?
Bizarre.
And if you look at it the last few years, like a lot of the times, and of course the favorites will jump in there and win it too, but you get a lot of guys that are just crazy long shots that nobody expected. I mean, Jackson Merrill is a perfect example. He didn't end up winning, but he was like 45-1 or 60-1 in spring training. Nobody knows. And that's the fun part about this whole equation with these rookies and with these prospects.
Yeah. All right. We are going to get to a couple of Dodgers in a moment, but before that, little whoosh. All right, picking up with a couple of Dodgers, Mike Sirota and Eduardo Quintero. Quintero, one of the best hitters in the lower minors this past year. Mike Sirota was fantastic. Sirota was acquired for Gavin Lux from Cincinnati going into the year. These two guys, I feel like, are close for a reason. Sirota makes the jump from 70 to 42. Quintero makes the jump from 69 to 44. So they rose in tandem. They were separated by one spot. They weren't separated. They were back-to-back, and now they're separated by one spot at the end of season update. Why do you love them as a package deal?
I don't know. It's funny. Like, we would joke about that sometimes where you look at top 100 lists, and it's like, oh, the players are just like back-to-back in the same org. And then I'm putting the list together, and moving guys around, and I'm like, what the heck? Why are these guys next to each other again? It's a weird thing that seems to just happen sometimes, unintentional. It's funny though. Some might be wondering, like Mike Sirota specifically, because Quintero and Sirota are kind of two different stories here, right? Where Quintero just kept hitting at a higher level than before. A young kid, looks like he can defend out there. Sirota was lighting the world on fire and then got hurt. Sirota continued to climb for two reasons. One, guys ahead of him graduated, of course. But two, the more people I talk to about Sirota, because sometimes I want to keep myself honest and not get too excited about a relatively small sample size. But it seemed like everybody that I spoke to from different teams or whatever it may be, they felt very confident that the 59 game sample that we got from Mike Sirota was enough to look at what he has now done, what he can now do, and say, this guy is, potentially one of the more exciting outfield prospects in the game. The swing decisions are elite. The power, and I think that's the biggest part, is it's a 59 game sample, but this guy's EV90 jumped to 107 miles per hour. I don't know if you saw, I posted a tweet about this, and then about the batted ball quality. And I even got, Mr. Richard Shank in there, teacher man.
Nice. Yeah.
Yelling at a cloud. I don't really know what point he was trying to make. But Sirota had not produced. I'll pull up the exact numbers in a moment on that front, but the quality of contact leap is just insane. Where with metal, he was hitting the ball significantly less hard than he's hitting it with wood now. And that, to me, is probably a combination of things. Added strength, but I think just optimized mechanics. And so cleaning up the swing, adding strength, all those things, but then he's still that same guy that can play a good center field, that can run a little bit, and that can do all these little things. So this was the tweet. Mike Sirota's uptick in power in his first pro season is ridiculous. Of the 135 balls in play I had access to in his last season at Northeastern, I could only find 2 batted balls north of 105 miles per hour. In 59 games in 2025, which was pro debut, Sirota produced 30 batted balls 105 miles per hour and above. From 2 to 35 or to 30 in one, I think the 1 year is crazy, but going from metal to wood, and then again, the swing decisions being great, the speed, the defense in center field. This guy has power like this and an EV90 of 107. This is a freak, and just a heck of a snipe by the Dodgers.
So everything mechanically coupled with spinach and bicep curls, probably. He definitely got a heck of a lot stronger, it seems.
Had to. And, it's a funny thing. And that's what Mr. Teacher, man, like he just responded and said, so bat speed is the same. And I was like, what do you mean? Probably not. If you're hitting the ball that much harder,
I would assume
argue that the bat speed is not the same. But then it, left it at that. But he, with the defensive ability now, like another guy where the floor seemed relatively high because he's going to give you good ABs and put enough bat on ball and run and play center. But now if he's got plus power, which the raw power is clearly plus, he was a 54% hard hit rate. Sirota has a chance to be a monster. It's just a matter of how does the knee look when he gets back. They were considering playing him in the Arizona Fall League, decided to err on the side of caution. I think that's a good thing. And so he should be full go. I think Sirota has a chance to really elevate his stock as, top 30 prospect in baseball if he can duplicate this at the AA level next year.
How about Quintero? Was it just a matter of him continuing to hit?
It was a matter of him continuing to hit. Quintero, we talked about in the early part of the season as another guy that was just quickly elevating his stock because of the fact that he added more power. And this was more in the traditional sense, right? 19-year-old or 18-year-old, now 19 years old, getting a little bit stronger. But on top of that, elevating the ball much more consistently. And like a lot of his hard hit balls, like his hard hit launch angle, which, I love to reference. What degrees, what angle are you hitting the ball at when you are hitting it hard says a lot about, your A swing. And his average launch angle, Quintero's on hard hit balls in 2024 was 4.5 degrees. It's going to be hard to consistently slug that way. That jumped all the way to 11.5 degrees in 2025. And it got better as the year progressed. The defense in center field looks like it can be at least above average, potentially plus. And then the approach is already so advanced for his age. So he already just looks like a high probability center fielder and at least like average center fielder out there. But now with potentially above average power, the plus wheels and everything as well, it looks like he could be a really good center fielder if it all works out.
Love it. A couple other guys in terms of risers. Alfredo Duno, another Cincinnati Red. Duno goes from 76 to 45. Duno has been amazing offensively this year. He looks every bit the part of 6'3", 250. Really fun conversation with him. It's available on YouTube and via the podcast page when we were out in Arizona. Clearly a likable guy. Mm-hmm. Why do you feel like this guy's at the level of being a top 50 prospect in the game?
He's got to be one of the more unique athletes I've maybe ever seen on the baseball field. And that's not to say he's like the best athlete, but how many guys are 6'3", 250 turn in above average run times to first base, move the way he does behind the dish? It's incredibly unique. I don't really know how else to describe it. And then you look at what Duno is done offensively, closing some of the gaps in the swing that I had concern about. I think was really encouraging. And being able to continue to maintain that elite approach. Like this was a sub 15% chase rate this year, and he maintained that in the AFL as well. I know it was a little bit ups and downs for him. A 19-year-old catcher in the AFL. He had a 3-homer game out there as well, though. So you got a really impressive finish to the season from him. But with Duno, it's just the quality of contact and the power upside there. It's a little bit more of a projection out because you're also projecting the defense, right? Like the defense it's not the Joe Mack conversation where, if he doesn't totally hit, he's going to be able to defend. You don't know for sure, but Duno has all of the skills to be a great defender. He flies for his size. He moves really well and athletically behind the dish. He has a rocket for an arm, and the receiving's gotten better. So that part I've just bought into a lot more compared to my early looks at him because I just had no idea he was as athletic as he is. And then the makeup. in that side of things, which I think is going to come in huge for him to already be, at a point where he's doing an interview in English with us as a 19-year-old catcher who has just been pushed already pretty aggressively. It's just incredible. And I think that goes a really long way, especially for a catcher in his role. And one, making it a little bit easier for him to make these transitions. But two, I think it says a lot about who he is as a player and how he goes about his business. And I just think the sum of all of those parts, he's going to be really valuable. But 22 home runs in 132 games, and there's more room in there. I still have some concerns that the hit tool could stall out at 30, and if it does, I still think he could be productive, though, because he hits the living crap out of the ball. He hedges with elite plate discipline already for his age, and he looks like he can give you value behind the dish.
Yep. Two outfielders that we got to talk about in terms of risers, and then we'll go to the fallers quick to wrap the show. Ryan Waldschmidt of the Snakes is, again, a top 50 prospect in baseball. He's at number 47. Ryan Waldschmidt makes the jump from 86 to 47, near 40-spot jump for Ryan Waldschmidt. You guys had him on the show as well. Really good conversation available on the Call Up podcast page. Plate discipline, clearly the tool that jumps out here, but it seems like everything else is kind of blossoming into him being this well-rounded outfielder that's probably big league ready. You have 27. Could it be September of 26?
It's going to be 26. I should update that because he just totally changed that over the span of like 3+ months. Should totally change the ATA. It's amazing how quick you can do that sometimes, especially as a college bat. With Waldschmidt, coming out of the draft, the conversation was, this guy can hit. He's going to pull the ball in the air at a high clip. He's going to walk. He's got a really good feel for the zone, and that really elevated the floor. But torn ACL in college, barely played defense. He's a good runner, though, but you didn't really know how that was going to translate. And, there was some concern that he may not even be a very good defensive left fielder. Now, he has worked hard on that side of his game. It was fun to talk to him about that, but also just talking to some people on the other side of things of like, what do you think of Waldschmidt's defense? What have you seen? Like the Diamondbacks are thrilled. Like, I don't even think like this is the best case scenario. I think if you would ask the Diamondbacks of Waldschmidt's progression, because he did everything that you'd want offensively. And then he looked so good defensively with the progress that he made in left, which he talked about on the show with us, that they gave him center field reps every day down the stretch. And now I don't know if that's going to work. Like, I don't know if he's a center fielder, but I would have told you at the start of last year that he wouldn't be an above average left fielder by the end of the season. So I'm not going to put a definitive no on center field for Waldschmidt because the Diamondbacks aren't putting a definitive no on it. They put him out there every day and down the stretch in center field at AA. So if Waldschmidt can even be an average center fielder, and you got to at least leave some opening for the possibility of that with his skill set, like, even if he's just filling in there 20, 30 games a year, that is so valuable. If he's an above average, then that's a whole different story. But what I think really helps create this complete picture for Waldschmidt is you've got an above average left fielder who may be able to at least just fill in center field. And the offensive production has been exactly what you would have wanted to see from college to the big leagues. He crushes fastballs. He's going to crush hangers. Well-executed breaking balls might get him here and there because of his path, but he never chases them. It's 15% chase rate. So, if you spot it on the corner 3 times, maybe, but I still think at that point he adjusts. And then the speed, becoming a little bit of a part of his game again. It's just he's everything you've wanted to see with Waldschmidt has happened.
That's awesome. Other guy, Dylan Beavers. Is it kind of a similar conversation there?
Yes. And with Beavers, I would say it's more like the Sal Stewart conversation. Because remember, we had Beavers on the back end of the top 100 before he debuted because of the leap in quality of contact and just defensive ability, but mostly the quality of contact. And then he went up and did it in the big leagues and it just extrapolated on something that we were already excited about. But he was a newcomer in the midseason update because of how much he had increased the quality of contact, maintaining the field to hit, the approach getting better. It was a tangible mechanical adjustment that preceded that, which, I'm always going to just run with that. And remember when we talked about him, it was like, this is the perfect, like 50s to 55s across the board. I love those guys. It was 50s at the time. I was a little bit more confident to push maybe to 55 with the plate discipline and hit future with what we saw at the big league level. So it was kind of the Sal Stewart progression there. And Beavers is, I know they're looking for outfielders. I don't necessarily know how he fits in, but I think Beavers should be getting primary reps against right-handed pitching, going from opening day onward next year.
It seems like they're prepped to hand him bulk platoon reps. I just Tyler O'Neill is the anchor in that situation, and I have no idea how they're going to utilize him. But you know what? Good luck. Godspeed.
It's a lot of money for a short platoon guy, but I honestly think like he should be grabbing the short side of the platoon there.
Yep. All right. We're going to send you into Thanksgiving with some negative chat. Fallers in a moment. Time to be a little sad right now. And we're going to jump actually near the top of this list with the guy that was just drafted in Ethan Holliday. Ethan Holliday was a top 20 prospect in baseball right after the draft, but he really, really struggled in his pro debut and his first taste of professional baseball. The fallers that we had here, Ethan Holliday went from 15 to 39. Por qué?
This is a hard one. I think if I had to look at the two, because they're two pretty quickly different evaluations here, I think I was a little overly bullish out of the draft. And even then, though, we talked about it. I liked Willits and Holliday kind of in tandem. But it's so hard to assess swing and miss concern in the amateur ranks. And Holliday had made that mechanical adjustment and then did start to perform better. But that mechanical adjustment may have just helped him against, high school pitching. It didn't seem to help him against professional pitching. And I mean, watching those ABs, I mean, he was just getting overrun. And there's just so much swing and miss. So then that kind of pushed me back to looking at some of the other swing and miss concerns that we saw in the amateur ranks and like watching some of that video before the swing adjustment. And there's been a lot of adjustments and chasing his tail a little bit and trying to figure it out. And I think there's just a fair amount of implied risk here because and again, he's top 40 prospect. So elite power potential, but the other part that was interesting to me too is, and I don't want to move a guy off a short early and I'm not going to do that, but there's some concern about his ability to play short. We talk about Eli Willits, like he looks like a plus defender there, even through the games that I was able to see. Like, it's just, I don't have a ton of confidence that he sticks it short. So if Holliday slides over to third and you have hit tool concern, there is a lot of pressure on that hit tool to get to 45 grade or 50. And then a lot of pressure on him to get to that plus power, because other than that, you're not getting a ton of value otherwise. Even if he does stick it short, I don't think he's going to be a phenomenal defender there. So there's more pressure on the offensive side of things. I think there's more concern about the contact ability. And then I think about it from a WAR perspective, it's going to be hard. And then I don't want to overreact to a pro debut of, a teenage bat in 20 games. But when the miss is that bad, I mean, we're talking 58% contact rate in 20 games. It's 41% strikeout rate. I don't want that isn't as much of what drove him down. It was more of, okay, well, I think he might slide to third. And the hit tool concerns of some of the people that I really respect that had echoed that to me. And I said, he made some changes, whatever. Now I can understand why they echoed that to me as an amateur. And now you saw it really rear its head as a pro. I think he's going to improve on these things. He's a Holliday. They seem to have the makeup and work ethic and cerebral ability to just continue to make adjustments and figure things out. But he's a totally different player than his brother, and it's a totally different situation, and it's a lot riskier. So that's the part that makes me a little concerned.
And I wonder if they have the infrastructure in place to help him to the best of his ability, because it's going to take a lot more helping than what Baltimore had to give to Jackson. So
I love the fit because he's a Holliday and, he's the highest upside guy potentially. Yeah. But yeah, I'm going to do a video series. So we talked about this. Like I've been talking about it with Peyton Gene. It's like, I want to do like how to make the Rockies good, or like, can we make the Rockies good? And I know it's way harder said than done. But the one thing that I would change day one in the approach here is stop pursuing high whiff, high power guys in a stadium that rewards contact more than any. And the one that you don't have to hit homers to be productive. You have more space in the outfield than anywhere else. Defense is a premium. And you don't have to hit the ball that hard for it to get out at the same time as well. So I don't get why, they keep pursuing these high whiff, high power guys. Again, Holliday fell into their lap. I don't blame him in this respect, but just kind of a larger conversation there. And they haven't had a ton of success with those types of guys in terms of getting them to hit more. So I am really interested to see. I think the good news is a little bit of a changing of the guards at the top in Colorado, which I don't know if it's going to be a good thing, but it can't be a worse thing. So that's what I'm interested to see. But I know Holliday will get better. It's just he fell a little bit just because I think I was too high on him out of the gate, and that was more of it. 39 is fine for a guy that just got drafted.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, next guy. Difference in organization, right? You go from a Rocky and Ethan Holliday to a Tampa Bay Ray and Carson Williams. Carson Williams dropped from 27 to 49. This is after a major league debut for Carson Williams. Why do you feel like he was docked 22 spots and is just inside the top 50?
So this is the reverse of the Sal Stewart comparison, right? Where you have a guy that struggled in AAA, got the call up, which I think was good, right? Like at the end of the year, might as well get him some big league opportunity, see what he needs to work on at the highest level. But he already was kind of finding out what he needed to work on at the AAA level. He was struggling there. And I really like Carson. He was awesome on the show as well. And a guy that I will, bet on, I think, from a makeup and work ethic standpoint. The conversation that we continue to have with him is that, he was a guy that was a little bit of a late bloomer in high school. I know the Rays talked about it. We talked about it in the interview with him. It's like, he's still learning all the intricacies that go into, making yourself the most successful professional player possible. But, I think that the fun thing with it as well is that, he has this unique skill set. The defense is so good. The power is there. So I was excited this year, to be honest. I thought he had made some improvements in 24 with the swing path, with the pitch recognition, with the approach. And you saw that via the output at the AA level and the improvement in contact rates and the improvement in production against spin. And I felt like, okay, well, here we go, right? Because it's not quite the catching conversation, but the offensive barrier to be a regular shortstop is pretty low when you're a great defender. But he also didn't defend, small sample, but he didn't defend to the way that, I think we thought. This is a guy that was, regarded, and I have as a plus defender at shortstop, and at times thought maybe it could be a 70. It was early. I think those things will all get better, but he wasn't picking it like an elite glove just yet. I think he eventually will pick it like a really good glove, but that was the other side of it. So you saw some of those gains that he made in AA kind of drop back a little bit at the AAA level. And then that extended to the big league level where there was just a lot of swing and miss. And then the defense wasn't just quite as, we had hoped. So that said, I still think it could all come together. He, by the way, still just 22 years old. We could look back at this and say maybe this was a little harsh. He's just a very difficult player to assess because, I don't know. Hit tool is so hard to project for guys that have now been in professional baseball for this long, but Carson's unique because, like he even talked about, he's learned so much more in the last couple of years in terms of what goes into that side of things. Cause he was a guy that was just surfing and, not just skating on natural ability in California, before really putting it all together and realizing, hey, I can do some things here that, not a lot of guys can do on a baseball field. With just my athleticism, skill set, and just the abilities that I have. So wouldn't surprise me at all if he unlocks more next year, but it was definitely a learning year for Carson Williams in 2025.
It's funny, man. I mean, he is probably the most high variance prospect in the top 100, and it is entirely dependent on that hit tool, right? If all of a sudden he looks like a 45 hitter, this guy could be one of the better shortstops in Major League Baseball. But if it's a 30 hit, and if it stays at a 30 hit, then you're looking at this guy as like, well, we've just got a cheaper version of Taylor Walls at this point, but probably a little bit more juice there. I feel like that would be a disservice to Carson Williams to comp him there because Taylor Walls is like Nick Allen level offensively, but you got to hit.
It's a risk. It's a risk because at the end of the day, like if you're punching and, you're not slugging, if you combine the big league and in AAA season last year, Carson hit 205 with a 299 OBP. So that said, he did hit 28 homers, but the homers become more of just like a fancy they're more aesthetic, right? If
Yeah.
you're OPSing 727, you're OPSing 727. The difference though is like for Taylor Walls to OPS 727, that guy has to be dialed in and spraying balls everywhere. And that's where Carson, it works in his favor, where assuming he's defending at an elite clip, though, that's the thing too. The defense needs to really grade out a little bit better next year. And I think it will. He's so good there. I think the game's just fast when you get up there, and you're also trying to just stay on top of your offensive side of things and prove that you belong there as a hitter. But if the defense is where we expect it to be, he could be a frustrating slug your way to 730 OPS and be still a 3-WAR shortstop. So that's what you're waiting to kind of see here. But skill set's really special. There's still so much to like, but it's a large sample of big swing and miss. It's a 30% K rate, I think, over the course of his minor league and major league career now. So it's just going to be something to shore up there.
A couple of guys to just wrap us up quick. I feel like these are sort of self-explanatory. I have two of them stacked at 50, 53 and 54. Sorry. Emmanuel Rodriguez with the Twins, Jordan Lawlar with the Diamondbacks. You're just getting sick of these guys not playing, and when they are playing, Emmanuel Rodriguez is really good when he's on the field. Problem is he's not on the field. I do feel like the docking of Emmanuel Rodriguez and Jordan Lawlar is pretty darn self-explanatory, right?
Yeah, it's just you got to play. And with Emmanuel, that's the case. With Lawlar, it's actually a little bit more layered and concerning in a different way. Yeah. So Emmanuel Rodriguez, by the way, played 18 games for Las Aguilas. He hit 314, 438, 706, 1143 OPS, five homers in that span. The guy mashes when he's on the field, but it's just, we were talking about it not too long ago. I mean, if you're going to set an over-under for games played next year, what, like 70, 65?
That's bullish. That's more than he's done in years.
And it's just not to pile on. My heart breaks for him. He's not trying to get hurt.
Yeah.
That's where we're at. But he's so freaking good at baseball that despite the fact that odds are he's going to play a third of the season, I'm still willing to keep him in the top 100 and well inside of it in the off chance that he plays 120, 130 games because he's that freaking good. So that's just the big thing for me with him is just, it's about availability, but every time he is available, we continue to see more of the same, which is a really, really good player. And that's why I think at this point, just break camp. I don't think there needs to be anything more in AAA. Don't waste any bullets. And this is unfortunate. It is shocking. It's incredible that how many players the Twins have this issue with. I'm not at the don't waste bullets with Walker Jenkins yet. I think he needs to play in AAA for a little bit and learn to tap into that power. But with Emmanuel, I'm not wasting another bullet. I think he should break camp and you get that guy at the big league level with big league trainers and try to preserve him that way. There's no building up to anything anymore. I don't think. I just get him up to the big leagues and hope you can preserve him up there.
All right, next guy, Jordan Lawlar. That's almost a more frustrating conversation than Emmanuel Rodriguez.
Yeah, because with Lawlar, he's doing it in AAA, but you also have some of the injury concerns. He had a lot of different injuries through the years now. And now I'm starting to be concerned of the fact that, like, we have only really been able to see him produce in the last couple of years in very hitter-friendly environments, right? You talk about what AA Amarillo and then, AAA Reno. Those are very good places to hit. And then when he gets up to the big leagues, just that quality of contact, it's not turning into much slug. And he's a guy that has decent quality of contact. I think the importance is being able to pull it in the air at a high clip and do all those little things. But I don't know. I think you see that quality of contact take a hit at the big league level, and there's just not as much carry on his fly balls. All of a sudden, he's not in the ball as hard. The biggest issue with him is the sliders, and they just continue to eat him up, especially at the big league level. And that side of things has been difficult as well. But even then, like, I think there's enough hope that offensively things can come along enough. I think what really has knocked him down for me is the defense, where this is a guy that looked like an above average to potentially plus shortstop. And now I know that he hasn't had a ton of opportunity there at the big league level because of the fact that they've got that taken care of. But he's moved around, and you figured he'd be okay. Well, he'll be a good second baseman. He'll be a good third baseman. been very, very uncomfortable in those spots. Like he had some serious throwing accuracy issues from third base, made a lot of errors there. He made just a lot of errors, period, at both second base and third base at the big league level. It looked like it became a mental thing as well at times where the game was quick on him. All of a sudden he's sitting back on hops that he never did. I would always see him attack those hops. All of a sudden he looks like he's kind of playing on his heels. And it just seems like he's a little overwhelmed at times. And I don't know if that's from moving around in the infield. I don't know if that's from the struggles at the plate that he's carrying out onto the field. But there's a lot of concern, I think. And, because we don't have one huge sample, but we've got a couple decent sized samples now of him just not only struggling at the big league level, but somewhat getting his doors blown off. He finished the year a little bit better and had a handful of good games. So I'm hoping that carries some momentum into, the next year here. But I mean, he has just continued to get decimated by sliders, really struggling to recognize them and hit them. And then you pair that with the defensive struggles, and what do you have to fall back on here? Because we talk about the range of outcomes and guys, okay, well, if it doesn't work out offensively, he's going to give you value here. Well, if he's struggling to throw the ball consistently for, just across the diamond, and that might be more of like a yips thing, but he's struggling to defend well, and he has these offensive challenges. Now there's more concerns and more variables for a guy that I really liked, because I felt like despite some offensive variables, you felt great about the defensive ability and the speed being a big part of his game.
Yeah. For the sake of pure transparency, I have had generationally horrible connection, so I'm going to give you the final two names of the fallers, and if I conk out, then I'll try and rejoin, but if not, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Jett Williams also makes a fall. Jett Williams goes from 28 to 69, so a 40-spot drop, and then Ethan Salas drops about 15 spots from 68 to 83. So give me the pitch on why Jett Williams fell as much as he did and why Ethan Salas of the Padres fell as much as he did.
Yeah, I think Jett, there's nothing that Jett specifically did. I think it was more just me wrapping my head around the type of player that I ultimately think he's going to be. And, I think there was time where we were hoping, okay, maybe he sticks at shortstop. Maybe he'll be, a good center fielder. And I don't really know if either is going to happen. I think he can get by in center field off his closing speed. I think maybe he can play shortstop in an absolute pinch, but I see a second baseman. And, so if he's a average or above average second baseman, I think that weighs down the profile a little bit. And then, on the offensive side of things, there's just a little bit more zone whiff, I think, than expected. It's not bad. Like the contact rates are solidly average, but I feel like for a guy like him, it's got to be better than that. He's going to be an outslug the exit velocities type of player here, right? Where he's going to pull the ball in the air at a high clip. And the exit velocities are average, but the ability to pull the ball in the air at a decently high clip will allow him to slug more. I think when you are closer to that fringy to average contact rate bucket there's a lot more pressure in optimizing those every single barrel. And I think it's harder to do that over 162 and be extremely productive. And then you say that, you do that at second base. So if it's let's say 20 homers, if it's 20 homers with good OBP and, 260 average, so let's say he's above average offensively and he's a solid second baseman. I think it's a good player, but I think there's a lot of other players that I would just value more with the defensive ability, with the hit tool, and all those different sides of things. But I could be a little bit harsh here on him. I know we definitely skew a little bit lower. I just the way four seamers have affected him a little bit as well, I think is something worth monitoring in terms of the zone whiff. Like he won't miss the mistake, but these good fastballs have been beating him at the top of the zone. And I think there's a lot of reward for him right now in being passive. And I don't know if we'll have that same level of reward, at the big league level. So those are the things I'm looking at. Changeups really gave him some issues. I think there's just a lot of, not even yellow, but like even just below that type of flags with a profile that I don't think provides a ton to dream on. That limits me a little bit with him. But again, I am also prepared to be wrong. And he's just this exciting, kind of compact, fun, dynamic player, and it all works out. But yeah, I think you pair the the challenges sometimes to cover the top, the need to pull the ball in the air at a high clip, and then the lack of a ton of defensive value there. And I just skew a little bit lower on him. Salas, I mean, I think the question for most people is going to be, why is he still in the top 100 versus why is he falling, right? I don't think I need to explain to people why he is falling, because he was hurt again, and we just have not been able to see him play very much. So that's been the big thing with him is availability. And then we also haven't really seen him succeed a ton. Like, I think the most successful stretch I've seen from him, besides the early low A days, was the ABs we saw him put together in the AFL, which I thought was very encouraging for a player at his age, especially though at that, at playing out there, turning into 770 OPS, keeping the strikeout rate in check, defending really well. And that gave me some excitement going into this season, but we only got a handful of games before a back issue, cut Salas's season short. He's still 19 years old until June, and he is as good of a defensive catcher already as we've got. I think Joe Mack he has the edge, but he's also got a couple years on him, 3 years, I think. But with Salas's defensive ability, he has a chance to be one of the best defensive catchers in baseball with the makeup and all of those things as well. This is the Patrick Bailey conversation, right? Where I think he could be close defensively. And then you look at the offensive ability, and it's like, okay, he has still so many years to figure it out. How often do we see these late blooming catchers at the big league level? Well, with Salas, it doesn't even have to be late blooming necessarily. He's just not on a wonderkin track anymore. At 19 years old, he's going to be a AA next year, and we'll see what it looks like. But if this guy's a 750 OPS at the highest level, he's going to be a 3+ WAR player, maybe more than that. With the defensive ability that Salas has. So that's what I really like about him. And then you look at some of the other aspects of his game, like at 18 years old, there was still some pretty decent quality of contact in the raw EV department. And so you look at that and say, okay, well, maybe that can continue to be a part of his game, where maybe all of a sudden he starts to hit 15+ homers. The feel to hit has always been good enough. I think those things are all going to come along a little bit more, as he gets more experience. So I just think the barrier offensively for him to be successful is so low. People with, scouts that I've talked to, and, people with different teams that I've spoken to, it's just, this guy's still valued as a top 100 caliber prospect for us, because you don't find defensive catchers like that very often, especially at his age. And, he's got a lot of time to just figure out how to be an average hitter. If he's an average hitter, he's going to be a really good catcher for a long time. But I think if Salas struggles next year, that you could see him start to slip out. Because, they'll push towards 20 years old. And at that point, you want to see at least some professional success offensively. So that'll be the thing to monitor. But I think he takes a big step forward next year. And again, even if he's 100 WRC plus, he's going to be sticking in the top 100 because of that defensive ability. And I will call towards Pat Bailey with him plenty. Jack, you were frozen and now you're back. Any final thoughts, final words?
Yeah, my Wi-Fi conked twice during that, and I'm excited to be back and say happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah, well, we made it through it because we are both not in our normal setups here, but have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the episode. We have a lot more going on in the coming weeks, but also going into next week. Marlins top prospects on the way, so more on Joe Mack, Robby Snelling, all that good stuff. Then more team top prospect lists as we continue to shore that up through the off-season. Player interviews on the way as well. As always, thank you for listening. Have a great Thanksgiving with you and yours, and we look forward to talking prospects with you on the other side of the holiday.